One thing I'm going to teach you today and discuss with you is that in April, it says Animal Farm was proclaimed a republic. So I just want to kind of share with you what are the different types of governments that we have in the world, and kind of like what do they mean, what do they stand for, what do they represent. Okay, so the first question that I have is, like, does anyone know what are the different types of governments that we have? Like,
What does it mean?
what does a republic mean? Okay, so let's just have everyone on board, and then I'll just start talking about this.
Is it like federal government and like provincial? Like
No, it's not federal and provincial. No, it's not exactly that. Just give me a second. Chapter number 9, Boxer's split hoof was a long time in healing. We remember that he has gone through several injuries, and they are taking their time. They had started the rebuilding of the windmill the day after the victory celebrations were ended. Boxer refused to take even a day off work and made it a point of honor not to let it be seen that he was in pain. Okay, he has taken the idea of sacrifice, nobility, and like patriotism. Patriotism is like being so interested in your country and being so in favor of your country to a whole new level, because he is now not going to take a single day of work, day off of work, and he cannot even like do off, like he cannot even show that he's in any sort of pain whatsoever. And in the evenings, he would admit privately, he would say to Clover that the hoof troubled him a lot. Clover treated the hoof with poultices of herbs, meaning little concoctions and medicines that she would make, which she prepared by chewing them. And both she and Benjamin urged Boxer to work less hard. And then it says, a horse's lungs do not last forever, she said to him. But Boxer would not listen. He said, only one real ambition left: to see the windmill well underway before he reached the age of retirement. And if you remember, he has done some self-reflection. He has kind of reflected in about his like age and what he's doing in his life, and what his age means, that he's coming towards the end of his life, or towards the tapering moments of his life. So he has come to that kind of recognition. And in response to that kind of epiphany that he had, he is just saying that I'm going to work even harder. Okay. I'm not even allowing myself to take out the smallest sigh or the smallest moan of pain. And now, being towards the brink of my life, I can only want one thing, and I'm going to work wholeheartedly and with singular focus on that one thing, which is to have the windmill in order. Okay, at the beginning, when the laws of Animal Farm were first formulated, the retiring age had been fixed for horses and pigs at 12, for cows at 14, for dogs at 9, for sheep at 7, hens and geese 5. Liberal old age pensions had been agreed upon. As yet, no animal had actually retired on pension, but of late, the subject had been discussed more and more. Now that the small field beyond the orchard had been set aside for barley, it was rumored that a corner of the large pasture was to be fenced off and turned into grazing ground for superannuated animals. For a horse, it was said the pension would be 5 pounds of corn a day, and in winter, 15 pounds of hay, with a carrot or possibly an apple on public holidays. Boxer's 12th birthday was due in the late summer of the following year. So all they're saying at this point is the fact that initially, when Old Major and when Snowball and Napoleon and all of them were kind of ruling in this sort of more socialist or communist way, meaning in a more like equal and uniform way, at that point, they had set these ages for horses and other animals that when they should retire. So for the horse, it was at 12, and Boxer is 11 years old, and he's about to turn 12. So he is about to retire, right? And at that point, when the Constitution was promulgated, the Animal Farm Constitution, which is the one that was created when Snowball was there. So at that point, they had even set up pensions, or like after retirement. So once you retire, you will not be working, but the government or the animal farm will be giving you some money for just, obviously now you need aid, you need help. So they're going to give you stuff for free because you've done your duty, you've done your bit in your youth. And now it's time for the state to take care of you because you've taken care of the state for your whole life. So for superannuated animals, meaning for those animals who have passed the retirement age or have become old. So for those animals, they are going to get lots of good stuff like 5 pounds of corn a day. And in winters, 15 pounds of hay. Now, life was hard. The winter was as cold as the last one had been. Food even shorter. And if you remember last winter, there was that whole paragraph that George Orwell had written on how it was miserable, dreary, and quite difficult a time, with food becoming more and more scarce, to the point that they were saying that we were getting the same amount of food that we were getting in Jones's time, if not less. If not less, at least it was the same. So in other words, there was no like benefit of the rebellion and breaking free of human control. So even now at this point, it's become worse. Once again, all the rations were reduced. So already they're rationing. So you only ration when you need to be like very cautious, because you need to like you need to create a schedule, or you need to create an arrangement or some sort of division or proportion per day or per meal, because your food supplies are less. So already they're rationing, and after rationing, despite the rationing, they're reducing the rations also. So it's like a double negative. They're just doing a lot. It's not a double negative, but it's quite extreme. Okay, so they were rationing everything except for obviously the dogs, the food for the dogs, which are the bodyguards, or rather the evil, villainous brutes that they are, and the pigs, because obviously pigs are superior. You know that. A too rigid equality in rations, Squealer explained, contrary to the principles of animalism. And the irony is that the principle of animalism being the law of this land, was that all animals are equal. And now look at what Squealer is, propagating. Squealer is saying, excuse me, if we are going to be too rigid, if we're going to have too much of equality and uniformity and treat everyone as equal, that's not what animalism is about. Animalism is about kind of like yo-yoing the level
hierarchy.
Exactly, yo-yoing the hierarchy and yo-yoing kind of the principle of
First the highest, and the second highest, and lowered and lowered and lowest, and depending on your position you will get the calories or the food.
Yes, now he's like cooked up a whole new principle of animalism. Okay, in any case, he had no difficulty in proving to the other animals that they were not in reality short of food, whatever the appearances might be. For the time being, certainly it had been found necessary to make a readjustment of rations. We always spoke of it as a readjustment, never as a reduction. But in comparison with the days of Jones, the improvement was enormous, don't you see? So what are they saying here? They are saying that whether or not the animals accepted the fact that the fact that Squealer is saying, which is that which is that equality in animals should not be taken too rigidly. Not all animals are equal, in other words. So the animals are obviously hesitating towards this idea. They're obviously a little concerned about this idea and a little bit confused that, hey, listen, this doesn't make sense to us. So they're not 100% on board with that idea, but they certainly were on board with this next idea that was being propagated by Squealer. And the next idea was that in reality, they are not short of food. No. See, look at this. Food was even shorter. No. In reality, they are not short of food. And the animals were falling for this. The animals easily were convinced on this point, because like right now what is happening, he's saying, is that we're making readjustments. We're just realigning the system. We're just coming up with a better system of rations. We're not reducing it, and no way are we in any way worse than we were in Jones's times. In fact, the improvement is just enormous. That's technically what he's saying, and the animals fall for this. Reading out the figures, obviously, as Hubaib has over and over told us, that they continuously exploit, manipulate, and capitalize on the lack of education that the other animals have. So what do they do to prove it? What is their way? Read false figures, obviously, and read it in a shrill voice. Like the louder you talk, the more right you sound, the more authoritative you sound. So you say, look, we have this much of food and this much food, whatever, right? So reading, and not just in loud voices, but not just in a loud voice, but in a rapid voice as well, so that you can't really follow along so fast that they can't really keep up with how fast he's talking. So reading out the figures in a shrill, rapid voice, he proved to them in detail that they had more oats, more hay, more turnips that they had than they had in Jones's days, that they now worked shorter hours, that their drinking water was of better quality, that they lived longer, that a larger proportion of the young ones survived infancy, and that they had more straw in their stalls and suffered less from fleas. The animals believed every word of it. Truth to tell, Jones and all he stood for had almost faded out of their memories. They knew their life nowadays was harsh and bare, that they were often hungry, often cold, that they were usually working when they were not asleep, but doubtless it had been worse in the old days. They were glad to believe so. Besides, in those days, they had been slaves. Now they were free. And that made all the difference, as Squealer did not fail to point out. Okay, so this is also a very important element of human nature, which is kind of, cognitive sort of amnesia, cognitive amnesia. What is amnesia? Amnesia means when you have
disease in which you start forgetting things.
Yeah, when you forget things, right? You forget things. And cognitive has to do with your thoughts. So when you forget the things that, were your reality, and forget your sensations, your experiences, your past life, you kind of have that kind of that cognitive dissonance, okay, that your ideas are not matching your current ideas, your present ideas are not matching your past experiences. And this happens, to be honest, this happens with everyone. And this is something that Squealer and Napoleon know really well about animal nature or human nature. They know that humans forget. And usually we forget trauma very fast. Like in this sense, because we don't want to suffer, because we don't like to suffer, because we don't want to feel bad, our brain sometimes plays tricks on us and convinces us that, look, it convinces us two things. A, that the previous life, all that trouble that we had was not that bad, or what we have right now is not that bad, like tricks us into thinking one of these things, that, oh, it wasn't that bad, we didn't suffer that much. Or your brain could do the second thing, is that say to you that, no, okay, so it's one of these things only, like either the past was not that bad,
it's
or
like fake regret. It's like untrue regret or untrue relief.
Untrue regret or untrue relief. Very good. Relief. I like that. I like what Hubaib has said on this. So in a sense, they don't want to be in pain. So their brain has kind of like blocked out the pain from the previous life. They're forgetting about it. Okay, they're forgetting about it. And in a way, because they want to be happy right now, because they don't want to be in a pained situation right now, as of today. So their brain has convinced them that the past was worse. Yes, Eamon, Natasha, what do you have to say? Can you elaborate on this idea maybe?
I just said that it's like this defense mechanism that the body does, or
exactly.
the brain does.
Yes, it is a defense mechanism. In fact, this is a very popular and very important one. Like I've heard a lot about trauma victims and seen obviously videos and stuff where someone has suffered greatly an ordeal in the past, and sometimes then their body, like their brain, either forgets it, or like somehow they just like go into this weird state where their mind just has blocked it, and they can't really relate to that past incident, and like it just doesn't sink in. And then like
natural therapy, right? Like it's a natural therapy.
It is a natural therapy. It is a natural therapy, but look at how it is a natural therapy. Okay, but there are two things. A, you sometimes have to address those thoughts. You do have to, because you can be triggered, you can be triggered by something that can bring you back to the past, and you can have a very bad life, and you can always be a little bit scared, a little bit vulnerable and unsafe from those memories. Secondly, by not addressing those memories, you're not living your true self and your true life, and not coming to terms with your true life. And like in this case, or with the animals, where they are not coming to terms with their true condition right now, they are being usurped and they are being like exploited, because they're not coming to terms with what's happening now and what happened previously and what's going on. And for them, they are just still thinking that we are now no longer slaves, but you can see they are very much slaves. In fact, they're prisoners. They're not slaves, they're now prisoners, and they're like puppets, if not slaves. And they're now other variations of the same thing. But their mind has played tricks on them, false deception, where they feel like their past was worse. Although if you ask them what happened in the past, their mind has like purposely forgotten it. So they can't really even like compare or do the analysis that what is the the pros and cons, and what is the compare and contrast, cause and effect. No, they can't do it. And Squealer knows this very well. And in fact, Squealer every day is going to point it out. Don't you realize we were slaves, we're free. And that made all the difference. And remember that they come up with these really, really good short slogans like slave, free, slave versus free, slave. It's not like a big word. It's not a very difficult word to understand. It's such a, sort of a word to appeal to the masses. It's a trigger point word. It's a word that can really easily sink in and brainwash them. And that's what they do. Like they give you these small cue words, and on that, their entire propaganda and their entire government is based. Okay, now there were many more mouths to feed. In the autumn, the 4 sows, meaning the 4 female pigs, had all littered about simultaneously, meaning they had given babies. They had produced 31 young pigs between them. The young pigs were piebald, and as Napoleon was the only boar on the farm, it was possible to guess at their parentage. It was announced that later, when bricks and timber had been purchased, a schoolroom would be built in the farmhouse garden. For the time being, the young pigs were given their instruction by Napoleon himself in the farmhouse kitchen. They took their exercise in the garden and were discouraged from playing with the other young animals So technically what has happened is, it turns out that Napoleon has, like these pigs are Napoleon's children, and he's saying that, okay, we're going to make this school for the children. But, this is also when and how we don't know. Just like the when and how of how the windmill is to come about the third time round, just like the second time round when the windmill was made, the machinery, the when and how of how the machinery would come into being, that was also quite cryptic and quite confusing. The when and how of like how that battle of the windmill was to take place, that was also very confusing. Everything very confusing. Similarly to this, when they'll get the bricks and the timber, how are you going to get the timber? Because you have been completely been, plundered and, taken advantage of by that guy, Frederick. They've taken all your money. So anyway, right now, Napoleon himself is educating these creatures, the children, his children. And to be honest, the fact that Napoleon knows how powerful a little bit of education is, I just feel like because he's ruling his entire, like, this legacy, his entire government on his, just because he looks educated, he is educated, and the others are not. He then creates a false story, a false narrative, concocts false facts, false ideas, and plays on their vulnerable, weak, minds. So I just feel like the way Napoleon had, remember with the small doggies also, like at a young age, kind of like made them his, and like took them under his wing and put them in arms and all of that.
Like kept them hidden for education.
Yeah, for his, like, they were a weapon in his artillery. And in the same way, he's giving these pigs their weapon, which is that bit of education that he can then expect that they're going to use in a similar way to how he has been using them to control the entire animal farm. Okay, they took the exercise in the garden. They were discouraged from playing with any other young animals. So clearly there is, again, that is, you don't need to be too rigid about equality on animal farm. Remember, it goes against the rules of animalism. So we don't play with the other young ones. About this time too, it was laid down as a rule that when a pig and any other animal met on the path, the other animal must stand aside. And also that all pigs of whatever degree were to have the privilege of wearing green ribbons on their tails on Sundays. So of course, naturally.
Now this is going against a very strong rule. No animal will wear clothes.
No animal.
This is the same reason why Muriel was banished.
Yeah,
not
she
Muriel.
had ribbons.
I think that.
Yeah.
Yes, Muriel.
No, I don't think it was Muriel. It was some other name. Molly, maybe. It was Molly?
Molly. Sorry, Molly.
Yeah, she was eating sugars and she had those medals and she liked her ribbons.
She had run away.
Yeah, she ran away to the farm, Fredericks or Pillington or one of the farms.
No, someone else.
Oh, okay. Yes. She goes to the coach of that man, of some man.
Anyway, she just didn't want to follow the rules of animalism, so she left.
Yeah, because she was also being like, she also in a way was being intimidated to leave. She couldn't be herself in Animal Farm. Whereas now, look at what's going on. Look at what's happening. They're wearing the green ribbons, the things that kind of led Molly to leave Animal Farm. And secondly, you must in decorum and in absolute kind of respect to the pig nation, stand aside, move to the right, not be in their path, because you stinking vermin, you just have germs and rabies and God knows what upon you. So you cannot be close to them. Like, simple as that. Because again, Squealer has explained and they have understood.
It's actually just to show loyalty, and it's actually just supposed to show loyalty.
It's supposed to show that you are beneath us.
Respect and loyalty.
No, it's not supposed to show that. It's supposed to show that you are beneath us. You are the second-class citizen. You are not the pig class, okay? Pigs, no matter how bad they are, no matter what degree they are, they could be the like the Jamadar pig, they could be the most worst of pig, but and this quite a lot reminds us of, like, because this is about the Russian Revolution and all and this and that. This quite a lot reminds us of a lot of Hitler, and the Russian Revolution was taking place close to the time when Hitler and all that was happening, right? So in Hitler's idea, if you are Aryan, if you are, German born, then you're good, right? No matter what. Just one second. Hello. Okay, no matter what, no matter if you're ugly, if you're happy, if you're rich, if you're poor, and if you are, if you're a Jew, however, no matter again who you are, if you're the best person on earth, the nicest person on the planet, anything, it doesn't matter. He wants to kill you, right? So that's a similar thing here, that it does not matter whether even the pigs are good or bad or superior or inferior. They are just by virtue of being pigs. Simple and blank. Just by virtue of being a pig, they are superior. This is so anti-animalism, and Old Major and Snowball, of course, would be very upset. But let's move on. The farm had had a fairly successful year, but it was still short of money. Now, I don't know why on earth they're saying this, that it was a fairly successful year. We have seen that this year for the farm has not been successful. So it's almost like this is the perspective of Squealer and the propaganda that they're doing, that, oh, it's been really successful, but we're still short of money. Then how on earth is it successful? It's a euphemism, and B, it's like an oxymoron. It's like not making sense, the two ideas. Like, how can it be successful and still be short of money? So anyway, now there were the bricks, sand and lime for the schoolroom to be purchased, and it would also be necessary to begin saving up again for the machinery for the windmill. So we need the schoolroom, we need the machines for the windmill, then we need lamp oil, candles for the house, everything for the house, by the way, for Napoleon and his comforts, Napoleon's own table, sugar for that. He forbade this to the other pigs on the ground that it made them fat. Okay, so only he can have sugar because it's gonna
They're also not supposed to have sugar.
They're not supposed to have
They're
sugar.
also not supposed, or any human-made food.
Exactly. Good. That is a good point. Sugar is a very processed food. And secondly, okay, even let's say if you're having it, look at the kind of excuses he has to curtail it from other people. He's so controlling. So he's saying, no, you can't have it, to the other pigs. And all the other usual replacements, such as tools, nails, string, coal, wire, scrap iron, and dog biscuits, of course. So the dogs, obviously, very important part of the budget are your doggies. Yeah. Okay. So then we have the next thing, which is a stump of hay and part of the potato crop was sold off, and the contract for eggs was increased to 600 a week, so that year the hens barely hatched enough chicks to keep their numbers at the same level. Okay, so now obviously he sold the timber for peanuts. Okay, he sold the timber. He's wasted the timber. So now obviously he needs to continue with his luxuries, like his dogs also need to continue with their luxuries. There's no rationing on them, clearly. But for the rest of the animals, poor thing, we are going to take away their hay. We're going to sell away their potatoes that they need to eat. We're going to also sell all the eggs, pretty much, okay? Which, remember, we've discussed this moral debate of why the eggs being sold is so extremely against the idea of animalism. So he has increased that. So to the point that now there are hardly any chicks. And in a way, if there was Snowball here, maybe Snowball would have said that no, we don't need to sell all the eggs, because if we sell all the eggs, then we'll have less chicks, then we'll have less eggs. Like he would have done a good proportion and balance. And I feel like this is not even a strategic idea, that you're just limiting your eggs so much to the point that your future investment of more eggs has been limited, because now there are less hens and less chicks being born. So then eventually the kind of, what is it called? The exponential growth of your eggs has reduced. So not a very good strategy here, but either way. Okay, then rations reduced in December were reduced again in February. Lanterns in the stalls were forbidden. You can't on the light because we have to save oil. But the pigs seemed comfortable. Okay, so for everyone there are restrictions, but pigs are okay. And in fact, they were putting on weight. One afternoon in late February, a warm, rich, appetizing scent, such as the animals had never smelled before, wafted itself across the yard from the little brew house which had been disused in Jones's time and which stood beyond the kitchen. Someone said it was the smell of cooking barley. The animals sniffed the air hungrily and wondered whether a warm mash was being prepared for their supper. Now the animals are smelling the sweet, delicious and thinking that maybe they're getting a special treat. So They sniffed the air hungrily and wondered whether warm mash. Okay, but no warm mash appeared. And on the following Sunday, it was announced that from now onwards, all barley would be reserved only for the pigs. Meaning the barley that's being grown, even in the normal, regular, raw barley form, you cannot, no other animal can eat it, touch it, or go near it, except for the pigs. And then the pigs are obviously probably making something with it, right? Remember the brewery and the distillery and the wine and the alcohol and all that fun stuff? So anyway, the field beyond the orchard had been sown with barley, and the news soon leaked out that every pig was now receiving a ration of a pint of beer daily, with half a gallon for Napoleon himself, which was always served to him in the Crown Derby soup tureen, which means that the pigs are now every day
It's
having
not
alcohol.
pint, it's pint.
Pint and pint, I think they're both correct, Hubeb. I think both can be read like that.
But the correct pronunciation is British.
No, you can't say that. You can't say what is correct. They're both appropriate. Acha, but if you say which is the British pronunciation, I honestly don't know if it's pint or pint. I guess it is pint. I guess it is pint. So anyway, but that's not the point.
English originated from Britain, it would be better if we follow British.
Okay.
Since it originated from Britain only.
Okay, okay, that's fine. Okay, now the thing here is that remember they're like the seven cardinal sins of humanity. Like in Christianity, we have in the Bible like these 7 cardinal sins, like greed and envy and lust and murder and like a couple others I can't remember, but one of them is greed, and one of them I think is like drinking and alcohol and intoxication, right? So this is like, see, there are a lot of sins that you can do in a day. Like maybe I do 1,000, a million, I don't know, but like there are certain sins which like are the cardinal sins, the most high in hierarchy kind of sins that we don't do often. Like how many of us can say that we've murdered someone? Like nobody, almost nobody, right? Except for certain people. And then you know that those people are tested and treated really, really in a different way. So these are not common crimes, these cardinal sins. And one of them being intoxication and alcohol just goes to show that even for humanity, for the human level, it is such a bad sin. So for these animals to be doing it, that means these animals have really become decadent, meaning they have lost their morality, and the pigs especially, and by losing the morality and losing all of their goodness and their pigness and their initial values, they are inevitably going to fall in the dumps and have a downfall. This is similar to the Mughal Empire kind of story. Like if you remember back in the day, the Muslims, the Mughals, they ruled the entire India. They ruled what was Pakistan now. They even ruled some parts of Afghanistan and I think East Mongolia and West Mongolia. I'm not really sure about the history. Persia, Iran.
Yeah, I remember they ruled most of the subcontinent. In the initial, they used to be very great leaders and very intelligent leaders, especially in the time of Aurangzeb, Akbar, and Babur. But then after Aurangzeb, they started focusing on luxuries and parties and wealth and all that stuff. They stopped focusing on the administration, and that led to the decline.
They actually, this is very famously reported, and it's history now for all of us. It's like recorded and it's out in the open that they fell into a bad life, into a luxurious, sinful, slovenly life. Yes, a greedy life where they actually, like gave up.
They actually became more ignorant. They became more ignorant and stopped focusing on administration.
Yeah, and not just did they stop focusing on administration, they also gave up a lot of control and told like X person, you rule this, you rule this. And those people who they were asking to rule were also just like not good. And that's kind of how we lost our control.
And sometimes all the advisors were fighting over for power.
Exactly. So it was just not a good state. And that was a very massive empire that was lost. Okay, a huge, massive empire. Think about it. If right now that empire had survived, we would be maybe bigger than America, in size, in shape, in power. Maybe we would be the superpower, and maybe we would just be like one big country called God knows what, but the Mughal country. And like, wow, right? But no. And that's what's happening here also. Anyway, let's continue. But if there were hardships to be borne, they were partly offset by the fact that life nowadays had a greater dignity than it had had before. There were more songs, more speeches, more processions. Napoleon had commanded that once a week there should be held something called a spontaneous demonstration, the object of which was to celebrate the struggles and triumphs of Animal Farm. At the appointed time, the animals would leave their work and march around the precincts of the farm in military formation, with the pigs leading, then the horses, then the cows, then the sheep, then the poultry. Poultry meaning the chickens and all that. The dogs flanked the procession, and at the head of all marched Napoleon's black cockerel. Boxer and Clover always carried between them a green banner marked with the hoof and the horn and the caption, "Long live Comrade Napoleon." Afterwards, there were recitations of poems composed in Napoleon's honor and a speech by Squealer giving particulars of the latest increases in the production of foodstuffs, and on occasion, a shot was fired from the gun. The sheep were the greatest devotees of the spontaneous demonstration, and if anyone complained, as a few animals sometimes did, when no pigs or dogs were near, that they wasted time and meant a lot of standing about in the cold, the sheep were sure to silence them with tremendous bleatings of 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. But by and large, the animals enjoyed these celebrations. They found it comforting to be reminded that, after all, they were truly their own masters, and that the work they did was for their own benefit. So that what with the songs, the processions, Squealer's lists of figures, the thunder of the gun, the crowing of the cockerel, and the fluttering of the flag, they were able to forget that their bellies were empty at least part of the time. Now, this is also a propaganda technique. This is also a way to silence your thought and your mind. And this is something that happens a lot, that trick the nation into a false sense of comfort by giving them more and more parties and luxuries and like a feeling of festivity and celebration. The thing that at least I remember, is that Napoleon throws this kind of bazooka out of nowhere on them and says, Frederick is the good guy. We don't want death to Frederick anymore. We want death to Pillington now. And I am going to do a transaction with Frederick. That is, the transaction is that I am going to sell all this timber that we have, like this surplus timber, this extra timber, we're going to sell to Frederick. He's going to give us money. That money we will use to put into the windmill, because we need the dynamos and the mechanos.
He was only going against Frederick just to threaten him that if he would not accept the right price, then they would sell it to Pillington. So just to force Frederick into selling at the right price.
Okay, that's what you think. That's fine. Let's see.
It might be possible that he was just threatening Frederick that and forcing him into buying the wood at the right price. Like the Frederick, he had increased the cost.
Okay, we'll see, Hubeb, if you are correct. So so what happened was, now the pigs, obviously, much like the sheep, because the sheep mindlessly listened to Napoleon. So the pigs also are, obviously, because Napoleon himself is a pig, so at least his kith and kin, his fraternity, are in like complete awe of his cunning and completely like, wow, Napoleon, you're such a smart guy that you're going to do such an amazing transaction with Frederick. Okay, so let's see this. Now, the pigs were in ecstasies over Napoleon's cunning by seeming to be friendly with Pillington. This is exactly what Hubeb had said. By seeming to be friendly, because this is now the narrative, this is the story that they have said, because like all the animals asked that, hey, listen, we're kind of confused. Initially at first you had said Pillington is the good guy, Frederick is the bad guy. Now you've totally changed your story. So what is the truth? So Napoleon and Squealer, they like said this, that the reason for him initially being nice to Pillington was that way Frederick is going to like get scared that, oh, why is Napoleon like friendly with Pillington? Because now Napoleon is going to sell to Pillington. And because of that, it forces Frederick to raise his price, his buying price. And that way the farm gets more money, like animal farm gets more money. But the superior quality of Napoleon's mind, said Squealer, was shown in the fact that he trusted nobody, not even Frederick. Frederick had wanted to pay for the timber with something called a check, which it seemed was a piece of paper with the promise to pay written upon it. You know what a check is, but Napoleon was too clever for him. He had demanded payment in real £5 notes, which were to be handed over before the timber was removed. Already Frederick had paid up, and the sum he had paid was just enough to buy the machinery for the windmill. Okay, so not just is Napoleon really smart that he's gotten a better price from Frederick by being extra chummy with Pillington and like putting on this fake facade, this fake story that he is perhaps going to sell to Pillington, and thereby forcing Napoleon, this other guy, Frederick, to give him more money. But he's also being extra cautious and extra sleuthily sly by making sure that, no, I'm not going to take a check from you. I'm going to take actual £5 notes. And he has, in fact, taken them before even giving the machinery. So he's taking them in advance. Okay, so now is a day that it's happening that they're going to give the timber to Frederick.
But
so it's being transported.
In today's life, the check is in a different sense in today's life. Check is right now we use accounts, like it takes the money from the accounts in today's.
No, we still have checks. We do have paper checks.
I know we're saying but today we use checks. In checks, we actually take the money from the account. At that time, it was promised to pay, but today it's actually like they take the money from your account.
No,
you don't have to pay it.
It's the same thing.
So I think checks are different.
No, but
it's
now,
the same.
Miss,
Mustafa, yes, Mustafa. First Mustafa, then Nail.
Okay.
Yes, Mustafa. Mustafa, speak.
He said that checks are used in paying large amounts. If some people, they even demand checks instead of cash.
Okay,
because it's like they take the money from account.
Nay, checks. The check that they're talking about, the check that we are talking about is the same thing. Because a check, unless and until you don't deposit it, it is still just a promise to pay. Even today, if I am taking a check, I give you a check, you don't immediately get the cash. So till the point that it is not deducted from my account, it is a promise. So it's kind of the same thing. The checks are the same thing, but let's move to the next thing. That what happens now? The timber is now being taken away at high speed. When it was all gone, another special meeting was held in the barn for the animals to inspect Frederick's banknotes. Smiling beatifically. Beatifically means like very peacefully. Okay, so he's smiling beatifically, and he is wearing both his decorations. One, I think, is animal hero first class and animal hero second class. He has both of them. So Napoleon is reposed, meaning he's relaxing on his bed of straw on the platform with the money at his side, neatly piled on a china dish from the farmhouse kitchen. The animals then filed slowly past. Each gazed his fill, like each is looking at the money like, ooh. And Boxer put out his nose to sniff at the banknotes, and the flimsy white things stirred and rustled in his breath. So, like, he's created a whole, like, again, a whole performance of just seeing the banknotes. And, you know, you can come and it's like he's the curator of the museum, and this is a museum, and he has some great big exhibition to show, and it's the money. 3 days later, there was a terrible hullabaloo. Whymper, his face deadly pale, came racing up the path on his bicycle, flung it down in the yard, rushed straight into the farmhouse. The next moment, a choking roar of rage sounded from Napoleon's apartments. The news of what had happened sped round the farm like wildfire. The banknotes were forgeries. Frederick had got the timber for nothing. And this is the real cunning of our Napoleon, that they were fake notes. Napoleon called the animals together immediately and in a terrible voice pronounced the death sentence upon Frederick. When captured, he said Frederick should be boiled alive. At the same time, he warned them that after this treacherous deed, the worst was to be expected. Frederick and his men might make their long expected attack at any moment. And then, because obviously long time back when he was like saying that I hate Frederick, Frederick's bad to his animals, there was also the rumor that Frederick is going to attack the windmill and attack Animal Farm. So the fact that then he said, no, that's not true, that's not happening. And we love Frederick, death to Pillington, not death to Frederick. When he's given him the money, it turns out to be fake money. He's back to square one saying that, we hate Frederick. And in fact, maybe because he has proven himself to be so treacherous, so bad, we should expect that attack also on our windmill and on our everything. And so these sentinels, which are basically soldiers, they're placed on all the approaches, meaning wherever you can approach or enter the farm from, it is the sentinels are being put there. In addition, 4 pigeons were sent to Foxwood with a conciliatory message, which it was hoped might reestablish good relations with Pillington. And at the same time, they sent 4 messengers, 4 pigeons that to Pillington, the guy who they were saying death to Pillington to now, that, oh, we want to be your friend. We're sorry. We didn't know, like Frederick was the bad guy and we thought you were the bad guy. We're so sorry. So that's what he's doing. He's doing a little bit of damage control. The very next morning, the attack came. Remember the attack that we were totally expecting? Okay. So the animals were at breakfast when the lookouts came racing. The lookouts meaning the people, the animals who were supposed to look out. They came racing in with the news that Frederick and his followers had come through the 5-barred gate. Boldly enough, the animals sallied forth to meet them, but this time they did not have the easy victory that they had had in the Battle of the Cowshed. So the animals are showing great bravery, and they are like trying their best to move forward, but they didn't get that same sort of reception, or they didn't have such a great time with this. No easy victory. There were 15 men, and you can already see why it is that maybe
but also it's not just the number of men, it's because they were not well prepared, because this time they didn't have Snowball.
Yes, that's exactly
when
what
Snowball was here, he had prepared them.
Yeah, you want to see, like, we could obviously look at it, like go back to the parts where Snowball and that battle took place, how he was initially preparing them, what were the things. We can look at that and do a comparison, but at the same time, what's really important here is that you can already see that it's so bad that they're having breakfast, which is it's not like in the middle of the night. It's a time that they should have been prepared, and there's no real preparation and nothing really that good going on with the way they're fighting.
We can say that the main difference between...
Yes, Mustafa, 1 second. Mustafa, you have something to say? Mustafa, you are raising your hand, then saying nothing. I don't know what's going on with Mustafa. Okay, we're moving on. So, there were 15 men, okay? So there were 15 men and with half a dozen guns between them, and they opened fire.
Yeah, so we can say that the main difference between Snowball and what was his name? Napoleon and Snowball, the main difference is that Snowball was clever and intelligent, but Napoleon was more cunning than intelligent.
Possibly. Okay, so then what happens? There were 15 men with half a dozen guns between them, and they opened fire as soon as they got within 50 yards. The animals could not face the terrible explosions and the stinging pellets, and in spite of the efforts of Napoleon and Boxer to rally them, they were soon driven back. So Napoleon is kind of like in the front of the battlefield, and Boxer is also there in the front of the battlefield, trying to make them strong, trying to, encourage them, but they cannot fight these people. A number of them were already wounded. So then they took safe haven, they took refuge in the farm buildings, and they were looking out from the chinks, the little holes, the knot holes. The whole of the big pasture, including the windmill, was in the hands of the enemy. For the moment, even Napoleon seemed at a loss. He paced up and down without a word, his tail rigid, twitching. Wistful glances were sent in the direction of Foxwood. If Pillington and his men would help them, the day might yet be won. But at this moment, the 4 pigeons who had been sent out on the day before returned. One of them, bearing a scrap of paper from Pillington, on it was penciled the words, "Serves you right." So Napoleon was at a loss. He's going up and down, pacing with stress. And, his tail is rigid and it's also like twitching because it's kind of like very stressed out and nervous. And he's constantly giving these looks, like these regretful and like wishful looks towards Pillington's farm. That, oh, please, Pillington, come and save us. And he's like having a little bit of hope in Pillington that maybe if Pillington sends aid, they can survive this battle, except that when the pigeons do arrive, it's written, "Serves you right." Like, you deserve it. You get your just desserts. You've gotten your just desserts. Okay, now, meanwhile, Frederick and his men had halted about the windmill. The animals watched them, and a murmur of dismay went around when the 2 men produced a crowbar, a sledgehammer, and they were going to knock the windmill down. Okay, the animals are really upset, obviously, because they're going to do tuck, tuck, tuck. They're going to kill it. They're going to demolish it. "Impossible. We have built the walls far too thick for that," cried Napoleon. "They could not knock it down in a week. Courage, comrades." So he's obviously very, very, confident, overconfident. Napoleon is saying it's so thick that nothing's going to happen to the walls and nothing's going to happen to our windmill. But Benjamin was watching the movements of the men very closely, very intently. The 2 with the hammer and the crowbar were drilling a hole near the base. Like, okay, so they were drilling the hole right at the bottom of the windmill, and slowly and with an air almost of amusement, Benjamin nodded. Yes? Mustafa, I can't hear you.
He's saying Napoleon was overconfident. Something was wrong with his headphones. He was saying that Napoleon is overconfident.
Yeah, he definitely is. And then what happens is, I thought so. Do you not see what they're doing? In another moment, they're going to pack blasting powder into that hole. So right at the bottom, towards the foundation, towards like the bottom level of your building, they're putting, making a hole, and they're going to throw dynamite inside of that, which is going to then explode. How are you, Manahil? Are you there?
Good.
Okay, Manahil, you've missed quite a bit, but I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, no problem. Just like listen to this, you will understand what's going on. Like if you just pay full attention. Okay, so now the animals are terrified, they're waiting. It was impossible now to venture, meaning to risk going out of the building, because not just are they going to be hit and killed, but there's going to be an explosion soon. So you don't want to go near a bomb blast, do you? So after a few minutes, the men were seen to be running in all directions. Now, what I find really interesting is that these men are so super prepared with how they're going to kill the windmill, how they're going to demolish the windmill. Whereas Napoleon is like totally out of touch with reality. He's totally out of touch with reality. He's out of touch with a concrete strategic plan. So there's a lot going on. Okay, then after a few minutes, the men were seen to be running in all the directions, and then there was a deafening roar. The pigeons swirled into the air. All the animals except Napoleon flung themselves flat onto their bellies and hid their faces. So they all crouch onto the floor, sprawl down, put their nestle their heads into the ground so that no debris or nothing hits them. And when they got up again, a huge cloud of black smoke was hanging where the windmill had been. Slowly, the breeze drifted the smoke away, and the windmill had ceased to exist. At this sight, the animals' courage returned to them. The fear and despair they had felt a moment earlier were drowned in their rage against this vile, contemptible act. A mighty cry for vengeance, for revenge, went up, and without waiting for further orders, because waiting for orders honestly just sounds like a bad idea because you don't have a good leader, right? So anyway, so without waiting for further orders, they charged forth in a body, like all together. And that's important, like the unity was important, and they made straight for the enemy. This time they did not heed the cruel pellets that swept over them like hail. It was a savage, bitter battle. So this time, despite the gunshots and everything, the explosions all around them, they did not heed it. They did not pay attention to it. They just let it hit them because it was a savage, bitter battle and they had to fight back. The men fired again and again, and when the animals got to close quarters, lashed out with their sticks and their heavy boots. A cow, 3 sheep, 2 geese killed, nearly everyone wounded, even Napoleon, who was directing operations from the rear. Now, suddenly he is at the back, at the rear. Very weird, because in the beginning, when they thought that they were going to win, Boxer and Napoleon were in front, ready to, like, Boxer, is the kind of guy who would be in front. But Napoleon's there to, like, obviously show himself as the greatest, most amazing person on this whole planet. However, the minute this guy, it's clear that it's out of Napoleon's hands, he's at the back. Like, whoa, what a character this Napoleon character is. Anyway, so even Napoleon got a little chip, a little bit, like a little hair of his got off from a pellet, a hair of his from his tail. But the men did not go unscathed either. So, like, in other words, although the animals are upset, not like that safe, and they are kind of in a lot of pain and agony and wounded, so are the men, because 3 of them had their heads broken by blows from Boxer's hoofs. Another was gored in the belly by a cow's horn. So gored meaning like all the inside and the entrails and everything is like kind of taken out, and he's very brutally injured. Another had his trousers nearly torn off by Jessie and Bluebell. And when the 9 dogs of Napoleon's own bodyguard, whom he had instructed to make a detour under cover of the head, suddenly appeared on the men's flank, baying ferociously, panic overtook them. They saw that they were in danger of being surrounded. Frederick shouted to his men to get out while the going was good, and the next moment the cowardly enemy was running for dear life. The animals chased them right down to the bottom of the field and got in some last kicks at them as they forced their way through the thorn hedge. So you know what? Napoleon has given the dogs the order that, hey, listen, make sure that you just hide in the hedges. OMG, that is exactly what Napoleon has said to these dogs, whom he had instructed to make a detour under cover of the hedge. Like, he had told them, go and be under the hedge. Like, oh my God, these dogs are your one weapon that you have. And the dogs, out of their own volition, out of their own mind, out of their own wits and their own, choice, they make the sensible decision of like trying to save their own people. And that is how the enemy actually flees or retreats for dear life, because of the dogs. I mean, it's really weird, isn't it? Okay, so they had one, but they were weary and they were bleeding. Slowly, they began to limp back towards the farm. The sight of their dead comrades stretched upon the grass moved some of them to tears. And for a little while, they halted, meaning they stopped, in sorrowful silence at the place where the windmill had once stood. Yes, it was gone. Almost the last trace even of their labor was gone. Even the foundations were partially destroyed. And in rebuilding it, they could not this time, as before, make use of the fallen stones, because this time the stones had vanished too. The force of the explosion had flung these stones to distances of hundreds of yards. Obviously, and the stones have disintegrated also. It was as though the windmill had never been. As they approached the farm, Squealer, who had unaccountably been absent during the fighting, came skipping towards them, whisking his tail, beaming with satisfaction, and the animals heard from the direction of the farm buildings the solemn booming of a gun. What is that gun firing for? Said Boxer. To celebrate our victory, cried Squealer. What victory? Said Boxer. His knees were bleeding, he had lost a shoe and split his hoof, and a dozen pellets had lodged themselves into his hind legs. So there are lots of bullets in his legs. What victory, comrade? Have we not driven the enemy off our soil, the sacred soil of Animal Farm? Okay, but they have destroyed the windmill and we had worked on it for 2 years. What matter? Now we'll build another windmill. We will build 6 windmills if we feel like. You do not appreciate, comrade, the mighty thing that we have done. The enemy was in occupation of this very ground that we stand upon, meaning the enemy is standing on this ground. He had occupied this ground, and now, thanks to the leadership of Comrade Napoleon, we have won every inch of it back again. We are amazing. Oh, then we have won back what we had before. said Boxer. Oh, what a wonderful line from Boxer. Like, he is actually strangely insightful. Like, he doesn't realize what a good comment he's made because he's like too simple and straightforward, but he's actually made a really amazing comment. Like, we just got what we had. Like, there's nothing so celebratory about this, but that is our victory. Now, I want to go through just a couple of points here. Firstly, Squealer was missing in action throughout the entire fight. Weird. Why on earth? Like, look at the hypocrisy. Look at the level of two-facedness and duplicity that is going on here. Second point. One second. Second point is that they hear the solemn booming of a gun, meaning the animals had guns and they didn't bother to use them. Like, Squealer and Napoleon weren't using these guns on these humans who, by the way, have like taken away their lives, taken away their farm, taken away their windmill, and to have such a disgustingly positive attitude to the fact that, oh, we'll build one more. No, we'll build 6 more windmills. I mean, the nerve, the audacious nerve to say that when Squealer, neither Napoleon have even picked up a single stone to do this. Okay, they have not picked a single stone to even do anything. Okay, first, Mustafa, tell me, what do you have to say?
Miss, I'm saying that Squealer, he didn't want to blow the gun because, of course, Napoleon must have commanded him to save the bullets for later on. Like, whenever we have a special birthday, like Napoleon's birthday, the gun will be blown. They want to save the pellets. That's why they must be doing this.
Very possible and very disgusting. You can see that it was very
also, how can they even cheer Napoleon at all? What had Napoleon done in the first place? Napoleon was the whole reason this happened. No preparations, there were no training, and it was the animals themselves. Napoleon ordered them to stay behind, and the animals disobeyed him and went to defeat the enemy. What had Napoleon even done? It was Napoleon's fault that they lost the windmill.
Exactly. And another thing is that it's pretty ironic, the fact that this particular fight was already presaged, meaning it was already foretold, or they already kind of knew about this fight. Okay, this fight is not something out of the ether, out of, nothingness. It was rumored, it was like calculated, it was said, they even said what day it would happen. Like, they even knew that as soon as the timber is removed, they're going to do it.
They didn't even prepare.
Yeah,
they still didn't prepare.
Yeah, exactly. That is
they must be blaming Napoleon, not cheering him.
Exactly. And that is what Boxer says. In a way, Boxer is saying that we should be like, what victory is it? Because they destroyed our windmill, they killed our people, and after that we just got what we already had. So what victory? And Squealer says that is our victory. Like, oh, I hate these people. Okay, now they limped into the yard. The pellets under the skin of Boxer's leg smarted painfully. Smarted meaning hurted painfully. He saw ahead of him the heavy labor of rebuilding the windmill. And remember, it was Boxer who did the overtime, who single-handedly, moved the blocks and all that. So for him, especially, you can just imagine that it's a very strange moment. Like, firstly, he is completely affected by the fact that he's like killed 4 people's heads, right? He like bashed their heads up there. Like, we saw that. He was an important person for kind of saving them. 3 of them had their heads broken by blows from Boxer's hooves, right? So he's killed a lot of people. He's been very good in the battle. He's been very instrumental to the battle, right? After that, he has, you can see all this injury, the knees, the shoe, the hoof, the pellets lodged deep within his legs. And then finally, he's the one who put in the extra hours, put in the extra work for the windmill and all of that. And, for him, it should be like a moment where recognition should dawn on him, or he should suddenly realize.
Napoleon, he just keeps using their lack of knowledge as an advantage and also as an escape from any blames or revolt. He's just using their lack of knowledge for his own advantage.
Yeah. Okay, so let's see now what's going on. He saw ahead of him, like now as he's going back into the yard, he's like foreseeing the future, that, oh my God, I'm going to have to do the heavy labor of rebuilding the windmill from the foundations. And already in imagination, he braced himself for the task. But for the first time, it occurred to him that he was 11 years old and that perhaps his great muscles were not quite what they had once been. Like I said, this should have been an earth-shattering epiphany sort of a moment where he should have an epiphany, like, you know, his eyes should open to the truth and everything, and everything should make sense to him. And in a way, this is the level of epiphany that he does have. The epiphany that he has is that, you know what, I want to rebuild this thing. I want to rebuild it, but I can't. I'm 11 years old and I'm not that strong anymore. Okay, now, but when the animals saw the green flag flying, the flag of victory, and heard the gun firing again 7 times, it was fired in all. Oh my God, they have 7 bullets. They clearly have more. Could they not put 7 bullets through the throats of these men? Like, what on earth? Anyway.
That shot 7 bullets, each of them in the chest or in the head, they could have easily killed half of the entire army.
Exactly. There were like just 12 people or so. And anyway, so 7 times it was fired and all, and heard the speech that Napoleon made, okay, congratulating them on their conduct. It did seem to them, after all, that they had gotten a great victory. When they, you know, when the celebration and all the festivities are in order, and Napoleon, of course, the very important part of the festivities, very important part of the festivities are the fact that, you know, he has to, of course, congratulate himself, I guess, more than anything else. Yes, Mustafa, you have something to say?
Miss Napoleon must have forgotten about the gun. That's why he must have not done
No, you really think so? I don't think I don't think so. He forgot. I think he's just that inane, and that inefficient and that pathetic a leader. And I feel like his mind is not in the right place. His heart is not in the right place. And you can't really even truly...
never in the right place from the beginning. He never even had a good heart. His heart is just made of stone.
You know, we will discuss this. We should discuss this. That is Napoleon truly bad, or is he just misguided, or is it he's so selfish? Yeah.
It would have been better if there was Snowball instead of Napoleon.
Yeah, of course.
So much better.
Of course, you have seen the deterioration that has taken place. It's almost like a demise, the death of Animal Farm.
Snowball would have never liked this. He wanted all of them to be equal.
Exactly.
But Napoleon, he's taken himself as the king.
Exactly. Perfect. Exactly. Okay. Now let's continue with this. So it says the animals which had been slain, which were lying dead in the battle, were given a very serious, solemn, sad funeral. Boxer and Clover pulled the wagon which served as a hearse. Now, obviously, Boxer has to do the work, right? So Boxer is pulling the cart which has the bodies of these dead animals on it. And Napoleon is going to walk at the head of the procession. So he's standing right in front of these carts and like making the carts follow him so that we all know he's leader. But if you remember, in the battle, he was in the rear at the back, right? Okay, anyway, 2 whole days were given over. Oh my God, 2 days they celebrated. I can't believe it. 2 days. They wasted so much time in song, in speech, in more firing of the gun, of the bloody gun. A special gift of an apple was bestowed on every animal, 2 ounces of corn for each bird, 3 biscuits for each dog. Now tell me, you have already been tricked out of so much of timber and so much of money. You already do not have enough harvest. Because of that, you were faking it, that you were putting like lots of straw and all that, and then just topping up your barrels with a little bit of food, right? And then your windmill is destroyed. and there seems to be no scope of anything positive, and you are like splurging and like just wasting more of the food that is coming. And look at this word bestowed, like bestowed or bestowed, like it means like a king has given to his subject. Like, so Napoleon has bestowed on these animals, like, because they're so beneath him. So he the great has given to these very smallians, the small guys, although you know that the animals have single-handedly saved. Okay, I think there's, yeah, Ahil has joined us. Okay. So the trick that I'm telling you that a lot of people use, and in fact, like, I feel like this is a very good trick that give people a reason to celebrate, give people a reason to feel happy and party, so that they forget, so that they get indulgent and like get they veer off course, they lose their seriousness on the serious issues, and they are kind of dissuaded from following a more practical, and important ideology, because you are giving them this glitter and glitz and glam, and you're giving this light, this glitterati lifestyle, and they're losing, like just think about it. I don't know, like lots of people this happens. This is like the first example coming in my mind, so I'm just sharing this example. It could be relevant to you guys. There are like some students who are very good at studies, and they are doing good work in school and all that, and then suddenly when they're growing up, like if it's a boy, they start liking girls. If it's a girl, then they start liking boys. It's that time when you start liking a boy or a girl or whatever. And then what happens is you like sometimes fall in the wrong crowds. TK, you sometimes fall with the wrong people who are like all the time about partying. They're just talking about boys or girls or makeup, clothes. And this person who was very serious, who was very like with their priorities right, with their priorities straight, starts to go astray and starts to lose their focus. And I don't know if this is going to hit home with any of you, or of this, or your parents have spoken to you about this, but this is something true, that this happens, that you can, because of like the glamour of, ooh, let's talk about, yeah, like let's talk about and ooh and ah, and like,
away.
yeah, you get carried away, and you get like
Like how they got
Yes,
carried away with the
yes, Ahil,
celebrations and the parties.
yeah, so you get carried away and you forget your
Like
good
the
friends.
animals got carried away.
No, it's like they have on purpose given them a bone, so that give a dog a bone means give a dog. Okay, what does this idiom mean? It means that you give a dog a bone which has no meat on it. Okay, you have not actually given him anything of substance or anything of value, but you have given him a bone. Okay, you've given him a bone so that he remains distracted enough not to remember that you didn't give him actual food. So they have not given them actual food and not actually given them anything actual, but are wasting their time and making them forget that life is hard with their speeches, with their songs, with the processions, with all this like gaga hullabaloo sort of situation.
Yeah, same thing happens when you give a dog a bone. Dogs like biting and playing with bones, so when you give them a bone, they get carried away with it.
Yeah, and they forget that, oh,
Like
they were
playing
supposed to
and cheering
attack
for-
you. Yeah, they forget that they were supposed to attack you, or you were the enemy.
Yeah.
Okay, they forget, like, you're the kind of intruder in the house. If you're the murderer in the house and you give the dog the bone, the dog becomes your ally and your friend and forgets. Like, that's not good. Okay. And as you know, these really troublesome pigs, sheep, who actually are quite the greatest supporters of Napoleon, they kind of just blah at all the most inopportune moments for the animals, when the animals can actually think at that time. See, in fact, some of the animals are complaining. The animals are complaining that why are we wasting time? Why are we wasting time? And the sheep are not just silencing their voice, but also distracting their minds so that they forget what they were thinking by doing good legs, bad legs, blah, blah. Manahil, where were you? Oh, Manahil's not still here. Manahil, where were you? Where were you? Where were you?
Sorry, miss, I didn't see the time.
Manahil, kill me, Manahil, just kill me.
Miss, 3/4 of the period is over.
Yeah. Tell that to Manahil, not to me. Tell that to her. 3/4 of the period, Manahil, the news flash has come about. 3/4 of the period is over. And
But the bigger news is that once it happened in Pakistan, that let me tell you this incident, that there was such a case that Ijaz Aslam was playing, that if in that Bad Bantiya game, if the people got 10 tolas, they would lose. If they got 5 tolas, he would win. That was such an odd case.
okay, no, I have
In
not.
their books. Actually, the deal box, they had said that if they get 10 dollars, they will offer deal box, but the deal box was empty.
I
So
see.
if they won $5, they would win, $10 lose. Breaking news.
Okay. So let's continue. In April, Animal Farm was proclaimed a republic, and it became necessary to elect a president. There was only one candidate, Napoleon, who was elected unanimously. Now, things like this have happened in even the Russian Revolution, from which this book is derived, right? That Stalin was the only guy, pretty much the only man who could be in power and then is elected. Is this a fair election? Is this, but they're going to say, no, look, it was democratic and it was really fair, but we know the truth. On the same day, it was given out that fresh documents had been discovered which revealed further details about Snowball's complicity with Jones. It now appeared that Snowball had not, as the animals had previously imagined, merely attempted to lose the battle of the cowshed by means of a stratagem, but had been openly fighting on Jones's side. In fact, it was he who had actually been the leader of the human forces and had charged into battle with the words "Long live humanity" on his lips. The wounds on Snowball's back, which a few of the animals still remembered to have seen, had been inflicted by Napoleon's teeth. Whoa.
How did they forget this thing at all?
Yeah. So some documents, see, they cannot just suddenly say it out of nowhere, because
their memories are super weak.
No, their memories are weak, but look, they themselves realize that we can't read. They themselves know their weakness. So they keep playing and pinching and putting salt on the wound so that they get intimidated. And when you get intimidated, you lose track of your original sense of being and sense of awareness and memories and the facts. You forget it. You forget the reality. So what I feel here is that this has happened, that showing the document that, listen, in this document, it says this. So now they can't dispute the document. So then they forget the truth. And look at this. It now appears that Snowball had not, as the animals had previously imagined. Now, the animals had never previously imagined anything. They were always being told a story by Squealer or by Napoleon. So technically what they're saying is that we are now taking back our original words and now we are coming up with a new story. But the way they are now saying it instead is, oh, the way you guys were thinking or what you had imagined, it's not that. It's actually that he was not just, creating a strategy behind the scenes. He was actually there. He was actually there fighting on Jones's side, fighting for the humans against us. And you do remember. And you see, he's peppered it with a little bit of truth, which they do remember, which was true, which was that Snowball was injured. So using that as like an impetus, or using that as sort of like a hinge or a hook for proving that, look, since we're telling you this true thing, so this next true thing is also true. This other thing that we're also saying is true. So like
in the future, it's impossible for Snowball to come and make all the right changes. It's almost impossible now.
Yeah,
they've all been brainwashed. So now Napoleon can't do anything. Snowball can't do anything.
Yes, but understand this brainwashing technique. Now that's important. The brainwashing technique is they take a fact that they remember, which happened, which is that Snowball was injured, and use that fact to then slip in a lie, which then you would not believe is a lie, because you will think it's the truth, because there is this fact that you remember, which you know about. And to the fact also, so not just now have you slipped in another lie, but even the fact is being refabricated, or it's being reformulated in a way.
It's just that they use this tactic that the animals who had weak minds and they were uneducated, they just over time changed the facts little by little. Because the animals, they sometimes forgot, so they little by little changed the facts. Good. And in the end, it was totally an opposite fact.
Yeah, you've heard of this. Is a very good point that Hubeb is bringing up. You know the game Chinese Whispers, right? In that particular game, like if, for example, I start with the word, let's say middle, right? Middle. And at the end of the game, the last person maybe ends up with the word raven. And you'll be like, hey, how is raven and middle, like they're so different, like to the point that you'll be like, hey, what? No, can't be raven turn to middle or middle turn to raven. But
like how we changed the words. Remember, we played a game in which we changed one word into another word.
Yeah, exactly. So
little by little, we keep changing the word.
Yeah. So like from changing raven to middle is very unlikely, and you wouldn't fall for it, and you would find it difficult. But that's not how the word morphed. That's not how the word transformed. It transformed, like Hubeb is saying, little by little, like one little small lie to the next small lie, so that the last lie they cannot compare to the first fact. They are comparing the last lie to the lie before that, the most recent lie before that, and there's not much difference in that. So that's why they're more likely to believe it. So anyway, in the middle of the summer, Moses the raven, remember, he had gone, reappeared after an absence of several years. He was quite unchanged. He still did no work. He talked in the same strain as ever about Sugar Candy Mountain. He would perch on a stump, flap his black wings, talk by the hour to anyone who would listen. Up there, comrades, he would say solemnly, pointing to the sky with his large beak. Up there, just on the other side of that dark cloud that you see there it lies Sugar Candy Mountain, that happy country where we poor animals shall rest forever from our labors. He even claimed to have been there on one of his higher flights, and to have seen the everlasting fields of clover, the linseed cake, the lump sugar growing on the hedges. Lump sugar doesn't grow on hedges. Okay, sugar does not grow on hedges. The lies.
I think the reason why he keeps telling these lies because he wants the animals to want to die so that he can feast on them, because he's a raven.
Okay, that's also possible.
Of course, he's like a scavenger. He's like a scavenger, and he feeds on dead animal. So he would obviously make the animals feel like they want to die. So that when they would die, he would eat them.
Very possible.
He's a scavenger.
Very possible. Okay, many of the animals believed him. Their lives now, they reasoned, were hungry and laborious. Was it not right and just that a better world should exist somewhere else? A thing that was difficult to determine was the attitude of the pigs towards Moses. They all declared contemptuously that his stories about Sugar Candy Mountain were lies, and yet they allowed him to remain on the farm, not working with an allowance of a gill of beer a day. Okay, so now some animals are not believing Moses, and they're like, what is Moses talking about? But then they're also confused because the pigs are showing mixed signals, are throwing mixed signals about Moses. Like the pigs are letting him be in the farm without him working for his work and giving him food, yet saying that he's a liar and his Sugar Candy Mountain stories are lies. Then if they're lies, why aren't they like rectifying his lies, or why aren't they reprimanding him? Why aren't they scolding him? Why aren't they, sending him off? They're not.
This even I can't understand.
Okay, we
This
will
I
discuss
can't
it.
even understand.
We're just towards the end of the class. That's why I just want to race it up a little bit. After his hoof had healed up, Boxer worked harder than ever. Indeed, all the animals worked like slaves that year. Oh my God. And just remember, two paragraphs down the road, it said that they were not slaves. And then George Orwell, purposely uses the words that they work like slaves, meaning they were slaves. Work like slaves that year. Apart from the regular work of the farm, they had to rebuild the windmill. They had to make a schoolyard just for the younger pigs, by the way, which was starting in March. Sometimes the long hours on insufficient food were hard to bear. But for Boxer, he never faltered, meaning everyone can feel hungry, everyone can feel tired, everyone can feel stuff and feel resentment and feel frustrated that, hey, listen, my stomach is growling. Why? And I'm doing so much work, but not Boxer, not Boxer. In nothing that he said or nothing that he did was there any sign that his strength was not what it had been. It was only his appearance that was a little altered. His hide less shiny, his great haunches seemed to have shrunken. The others said, Boxer will pick up when the spring grass comes on. But the spring came and Boxer grew no fatter. Sometimes on the slope leading to the top of the quarry, when he braced his muscles against the weight of some vast boulder, it seemed that nothing kept him on his feet except the will to continue. At such times, his lips were seen to form the words, I will work harder. He had no voice left. Once again, Clover and Benjamin warned him to take care of his health, but Boxer paid no attention. His 12th birthday was approaching. He did not care what happened so long as a good store of stone was accumulated before he went on pension. Okay, we are going to stop here. Okay, a very sad paragraph. Okay, if you have followed through, you will feel hurt for Boxer. I'm not going to do the analysis of it right now. We will stop here. So we are on page 37. Okay, please someone remind 37 is Gill a day. We will next class start from here. And I don't want to do aage because then that way you'll see what, like, you can read it, but it's sad. It's sad. Okay, so Natasha, Eamon, Ahil, one comment from all of you. Can you just tell me a little bit, what did you feel today after reading this? Because Hubaib has done all the talking, Mustafa.
I think that the play of Napoleon and like Squealer is finally coming to like an end, because the writer is giving little hints in that paragraph in which he told that they were getting tired of everything, but then and then because in the end it will probably turn out that Napoleon is gonna be the bad one, right? So okay. I think this is how we want.
You think he's...
And I do feel bad for Boxer as well, because he keeps on working, like, even though.
What about you, Natasha?
I just think that Animal Farm is like, it's already on its downfall, but it's like going to crash very soon. Maybe the humans will just attack once again or something. And I'm just wondering what will happen to the farm when Boxer dies, because he's the one who works the most.
What about you, Okay, what about you,
Miss,
Mustafa?
I'm saying that I think so. Napoleon will keep on terrorizing the animals, and the animals won't even care. He would keep on changing their memories, and the animal farm would go on like this.
Acha, okay. What about you, Ahil? Anything that you would like to share?
Miss, I think I'm very confused because like Napoleon is starting to change, and like not change, but like he's starting to, like, his whole plan is going down. And at the same time, I agree with Natasha that the animal farm, like from the start, it was a bad decision. And I think it's going like down, and at one point it will crash. And yeah.
Okay, I think these are good points. My last question to all of you, and we'll stop at this point, is if Animal Farm is going to, like we all are kind of agreeing that Napoleon's rule is about to finish, and Napoleon is losing power in a way, although he's still hanging on, like with his trotters, he is hanging on. So if his power completely diminishes and finishes, and it's his downfall, I just want to ask you that will the animals be going down with him? Because you know how they say that मैं डूबूंगा but मैं आपको भी डुबाऊंगा, so like that's kind of, I feel like what it could be, but that remains to be seen.
You mean if I'm going down, I'm taking you down with me?
I'm taking you down as well. Yeah, so is
Miss, I'm gonna
it
say yes. Because
okay?
Miss, the animals are really foolish, and they're just not gonna listen to anything else. I
animals,
agree with this point.
the poor animals are
They
really
are
cute and sweet, but yes, to the point, like being this dumb, but then okay,
Their
they're being
acts are
this,
quite foolish, but like they still don't know what they're doing wrong, but they're doing it. They think that they're doing it right. Yes, Miss. They still think they're doing the right thing, but they're not.
they're not. And also whenever they try, they get silenced by aggression and violence. So
whenever they try to stand up for themselves, then Napoleon shuts them down. So there's like no way they're gonna. And I think
be able to do
they
that.
do realize it on their own, but they don't speak up because they know what's gonna happen.
Yeah,
Miss, I think one possibility
Ours-
is that if Snowball comes back, maybe then they have a chance of.
Snowball comes back.
I think they are
But-
realizing, but the fact
Mm.
that they're just telling themselves, no, that's just like they're just assuring it to themselves that no, we're like gone mad or crazy. It's not actually the truth. And even if Snowball comes back, like Hubeb said, that Napoleon has almost made it impossible for the animals to accept him.
You're so right. Okay.
Napoleon has already brainwashed them, so now how can they think for themselves? Of course, they were pretending that they forgot the rules of the 7 commandments. They're pretending that they forgot parts of the 7 commandments, which were actually just added later on.
Exactly.
So if they can't even remember that, how will they remember anything at all?
Yep. Okay, so we stop here. We'll try and finish this. I think maybe Tuesday we'll just finish it. Like we'll do one more class and finish it. So I'll see you then. Take care. Bye-bye. See you. Animals, and they don't
You haven't given permission yet.
There was a farm of animals who didn't like that their rulers were humans. So they kind of just removed the humans. And
Rebelled and attacked.
Yes, rebelled and attacked. So we are on the last chapter of this book. And I think we started, because I don't want to waste any time, they rebel against everyone, meaning that against the humans. And Vanya, why do they do that? Because they don't like the humans like dictatorship. They don't like that the humans don't treat them fairly. They don't like that the humans are greedy. They don't like the human sins, the human vices, the human bad qualities. And just for that one sake, they decide that they will rebel against the humans. But the funny part is that now that they are in charge of their own selves, they are masters of their own selves, it seems like they are following in the humans' bad footsteps. Those footsteps that were negative, those footsteps that were not right for them and not good, they're following in those footsteps. Okay, either way, let's start with
and the main reason for all of this is Napoleon. Napoleon is the real traitor, and he changed the animals into as bad as the humans.
Exactly. So let's just see in the last chapter, if you guys remember, the last moment was that Boxer had been taken away into this van, and they said that this van was actually taking him to the hospital, but clearly the van is not taking him to the hospital. It's taking him to the place where they're going to the horse slaughterer. Okay, to the horse slaughterer place, and they're going to like kill Boxer, and they're going to make hides out of him, bone meal out of him, like uses bones to make food for other animals, technically, for like cat food, dog food, and all of that. Okay. And at the very end, Boxer realizes that he's about to be taken to his death. So he rebels. He again makes like he tries his best to get out of these shackles, which Napoleon, who's the really bad.
And one more very important thing is that the animals, they're not good at education, and their memories are very weak. So Napoleon, he keeps spreading lies and changes their memories. He actually brainwashes them.
Exactly. Okay, so let's see how this book ends. So years have passed. From that Boxer incident, years have passed. The seasons came and went. The short animal lives fled by. So obviously, animals don't have the kind of lifespan of us humans. Humans have an average of like 63, 64, 65 years. Animals, like even old animals, they live maximum for 20 years. So because they had anyway less time to live, their lives have died. So a time came when there was no one who remembered the old days before the rebellion, except for just these people, like Clover, Benjamin the horse, Moses the raven, and a few pigs. Muriel, dead. Bluebell, Jesse, Pincher, dead. Jones is the guy who owned the farm initially, died. Okay, he had died in an inebriate's home in another part of the country. Inebriates means drunk people's home, an alcoholic person's house.
He was a very drunk person.
Snowball, forgotten. Snowball was kind of the good pig who had been removed from power. Boxer,
because Napoleon, he had brought up 9 ferocious dogs. He had been responsible for their upbringing, and he used them to get rid of Napoleon and to enforce his law.
Correct. Okay, Boxer was forgotten except by the few who had known him. Now, when I first time read this book, and I realized that at the end, right here, when Napoleon is about to die, when Boxer is about to die and then Boxer dies, I would expect that the last chapter would be like they all get so angry at Snowball, at Napoleon. They get so angry at him, and they suddenly decide to revolt against him, and they get back their power, and they get to a good animal farm, like they have a good government.
I was also expecting some kind of the similar thing, that Snowball would come back and bring justice back in power. I was actually kind of expecting that.
Yeah, but let's see what it is. What has happened instead of us getting a happy ending, that Snowball is coming into power, Napoleon has been put to right, none of that. But in fact, all the animals are almost dead, except for a few people. Only a few of them remember a Boxer even. Snowball even is forgotten. Clover, she was an old stout mare now. She was stiff in the joints with a tendency to rheumy eyes, like runny red eyes. She was 2 years past the retiring age, but in fact, no animal had actually retired. Really interesting. The last chapter that we had, Boxer was about to retire. He was like 1 or 2 days before retirement when he suddenly falls down and gets really, he faints or whatever it is that happens to him. And remember, they had kept that specific place that, okay, after superannuation, after your retirement, you can come enjoy this place, eat from this grass. But no animal has actually retired, which just means that this government is so askew. It's just not a good government at all, to the point that it doesn't allow anyone to retire. The talk of setting aside a corner of the pasture for superannuated animals had long been dropped. Okay, look at that. Like, remember they were saying that, oh, if we retire, for the people, our old age people, our retired people, let's keep a small.
There would also be a pension.
Yeah, there'll be a pension, there'll be a small place for them to enjoy, grace. But no, they didn't do that. Napoleon was now a mature boar of 24 stone. He has put on a lot of weight. Squealer was so fat that he could with difficulty see out of his eyes. So he could hardly see with his eyes. Only old Benjamin was the same as ever, except for being a little grayer about the muzzle, and since Boxer's death, more morose and taciturn than ever. So what they're saying is that the kind of shift or evolution of these animals, lots of them have died. The ones in power have become so fat that they've gone to the level of obesity, and they have kind of like, in fact, now Squealer can't even see. Look, he's so fat. Look, he's so fat that these cheeks of his are coming up to here, and he can hardly see with his eyes. Okay, and then we have and remember, Squealer was like really the eyes of Napoleon, in a sense. Like, he was all the time keeping a lookout. He was a guard dog in a sense to Napoleon, making sure that nobody steps out of line. And yet at this point he can't see. This is just showing that they've had too much alcohol, they had too much greed, they ate too much, they were gluttonous, and they, like, you know, fed their lust for food to a sinful amount. Okay, and old Benjamin, poor thing, he has retained much of his old self, except that he is now more silent, more sad, more serious. There were many more creatures on the farm now, though the increase was not so great as had been expected in earlier years. Many animals had been born to whom the rebellion was only a dim tradition passed on by word of mouth, and others had been bought who had never heard mention of such a thing before their arrival. The farm possessed 3 horses now besides Clover. They were fine, upstanding beasts, willing workers, good comrades, but very stupid. None of them proved able to learn the alphabet beyond the letter B. They accepted everything that they were told about the rebellion and the principles of animalism, especially from Clover, for whom they had an almost filial respect, but it was doubtful whether they understood very much of it. Okay, so now the people, those few animals who are still a little bit of the past, like who remember the past, let's say those people are just one second. Okay. So those people who are kind of like who were part of the rebellion, who like knew old Major, who knew Boxer, who knew Snowball, who knew Napoleon, who saw how the battle of the cowshed and the battle of the windmill and all those battles, they knew those things. Those people have dwindled to very few, and now they're just a lot of newcomers in the city, in the farm. And these newcomers, they don't seem to have too much of interest in the revolution. And I think this is kind of something that I personally can relate. When I was small, like my Nana, he used to tell me a lot. Like whenever I used to go to Lahore, the first thing he would tell me is like about, oh, Pakistan, when it was being made, and, you know, we did this, and the Muslim League did this, and Qaeda-Azam did this. And I was like, I used to find it the most boring thing ever. And I used to be like, can't relate. And in that way, I didn't really appreciate the struggle or the revolution that they did, his generation did, to make Pakistan. And I took it really for granted. And that's, and for me, like, you know, reading or singing the national anthem, talking about Qaeda-Azam is just lip service in a sense. It's like a dim tradition.
There's many children of this generation also, they're also thinking as that this way.
Exactly.
Many children.
Exactly.
In fact, most.
Exactly. So the point here is that it's just like, you know, someone is passing it by word of mouth. Some of them have never even heard of it. Some of them have never even heard of it. And only when they came to this farm, did they hear of it? And they're like, okay, whatever, it's not that important. Now, here's something that I like. They were like 3 new horses, okay, who are very willing workers. Again, which is showing to us that horses in this book are like shown as much better characters than others. They're very like into work. They're very industrious. They're very busy. They're very hardworking. They're good comrades, but they're not too intelligent, right? And now the funny thing is that Boxer was also like this, like very unintelligent, not smart. And yet, if you remember, Boxer learned till the letter D. And Boxer wanted to learn all the other letters as soon as his school was like his retirement started. So after his retirement, he would learn them. So actually, Boxer turned out to be the smartest of the horses. Like we initially thought that Boxer is the dummy. He's a silly one. But it turns out that Boxer is actually the really smart one and the really intelligent one. So that was something that I found interesting. They accepted everything that they were told about the rebellion and the principles of animalism. Now, just like these previous herd of animals believed what Napoleon said, believed what Old Major said, believed without really thinking too much, what are the principles of animalism, what is it all about? Similar to that, this new generation is doing the same thing. They're also not questioning anything and just accepting everything on face value, despite the fact that they don't seem to be understanding much of what is being said.
Miss, this book is kind of like the opposite of most novels. It's like it has a good beginning, but then a sad ending and a great problem. And most books, they have like a problem at the beginning. There's all this climax, and then after that is the resolution, the happy ending.
Exactly.
It's like a backwards novel.
Exactly. So let's see this. The farm was more prosperous now, meaning it was doing better. It was better organized. It even had become bigger because they bought these farms from Mr. Pillington. Now, if you remember, they were like all the time making these fusses, Mr. Pillington and Frederick, right? It was Frederick. And Frederick was the bad guy that everyone was not liking, and we weren't to trust that Frederick's farm. And you can see that at the end, Mr. Pillington only was the better farmer in the sense that he benefited Animal Farm and they did get the land from him. So he turned out to be the better guy, although this whole time, our Napoleon has been supporting Frederick. And you know how Frederick even tricked him by giving him fake notes, checks, and all that. Okay, the windmill finally completed. Now, see, this should have been a happy ending, right? Like Abeb was saying, this should have been a happy ending. It should have been a happy ending because most books are structured in that way, that the end is happy. Also, it should have been a happy ending because the farm is more prosperous. There are more people. It's better organized. The windmill is also made. It's bigger. And so many things. And now we don't have to fight against Mr. Jones. Like, we don't have to do that. So let's see.
And also the functions of the wingmills were just as they had planned at the beginning. Snowball had planned.
Exactly. The farm possessed a threshing machine. It had a hay elevator of its own. It has various new buildings had been added to it. Whymper had bought himself a dog cart. Whymper was kind of the middleman, the agent, the intermediary. The windmill, however, had not, after all, been used for generating electrical power. It was used for milling corn and brought in a handsome money profit. The animals were hard at work building yet another windmill. When that one was finished, so it was said, the dynamos would be installed. But the luxuries of which Snowball had once taught the animals to dream, the stalls with electric light and hot and cold water and the 3-day week were no longer talked about. Napoleon had denounced such ideas as contrary to the spirit of animalism. The truest happiness, he said, lay in working hard and living frugally. So remember, when they were forcing, when Snowball gave the idea the first time, Snowball, the good kind of pig, gave the idea the first time, then let's make the windmill. He said, if we make the windmill, I know it's going to be a lot of effort right now, but you will enjoy your time. You will have to work less. You will be able to optimize the yield that you make, the produce that comes out. your efforts will give you, more, will accumulate to much more. But now that the windmill is made, they not just are making a lot of money from it. Okay, so they're making a lot of money from this windmill, but they are also going to make another windmill. Okay, so now we have money also coming, we have the windmill also coming, and we have another windmill also coming. So technically,
but I think Napoleon has one good point, that if they had used it for electrical power, the animals, they would start becoming lazy. And the whole point of the rebellion was to conquer all of England and Ireland. So if they would become more, if they had become more hardworking, they could easily conquer all of England and Ireland. But they didn't follow that.
I don't think so, that I don't agree with you there at all. In fact, see, because the thing here is that if they are constantly working hard in one way, on one farm, then how can they conquer any other place? It is only when they are going to give over or delegate their task to the machine, can they then move to the next place to conquer that next place. So anyway, that's not the point. The point here is that this was the ultimate utopia, the perfect heaven, the perfect thing that should happen, that they should have one windmill. And now they don't have one, they have one successful windmill. And they just don't have that one successful windmill, they are almost having two windmills. And yet now Napoleon is saying to them, you cannot have any off days, you cannot have any comfort, you cannot have any sort of luxury. All you can do is to work hard, meaning be my slave, keep working. And remember, they're not getting anything in return, because you work hard, but be frugal. Be very we'll give you this much for this much of work. For this much of work, you get this much. So again, this is his method to contain and retain the power over them. And look at his own state. He is so fat that he's 24 stone. I don't know how much that is, but that's really fat. And Squealer is so fat that his cheeks have literally half covered his eyes and he cannot see. So they can be fat and do nothing. And you can see, and look at this. Whimper, who is that kind of agent, who's actually helping them to get money and make money, is getting luxuries. Like he's allowed to buy himself a dog cart so that he doesn't have to walk too much. So the Whimper is allowed it, and not the animals. Anyway, somehow it seemed as though the farm had grown richer without making the animals themselves any richer, except for the pigs and the dogs, of course. So the farm's really rich, except is working class, those, the peasant class, I would call them the peasant, or the serfs, the slaves, they are not doing well. Perhaps this was partly because there were so many pigs and there were so many dogs. It was not that these creatures did not work after their fashion. There was, as Squealer was never tired of explaining, endless work in the supervision and organization of the farm. Much of this work was of a kind that other animals were too ignorant to understand. For example, Squealer told them that the pigs had to expand enormous labors every day upon mysterious things called files, reports, minutes, and memoranda. These were large sheets of paper which had to be closely covered with writing, and as soon as they were so covered, they were burnt in the furnace. This was of the highest importance for the welfare of the farm, Squealer said. But still, neither pigs nor dogs produced any food by their own labor, and there were very many of them, and their appetites were always good. So again, we can see the dichotomy, the difference, the distinction, the hypocrisy. Yeah, the hypocrisy that is taking place. What is the hypocrisy? That the farm's doing amazing, but none of the animals are to benefit. And yet the farm's doing amazing. And yet the pigs and the dogs are also doing amazing. And they seem to get more and more in number. And despite them being more in number, you would say, okay, you're a lot in number. Let's ration you out because you guys are so many. So there's so many multiplied exponential amount of mouths to feed of pigs and dogs. But no, they're not feeding them. They're feeding them. They're feeding every single one of them. And the little few, 3 horses, 1 Clover, 1 this Benjamin, 1, they are not getting anything. And the funny thing is, Squealer is not stopping. He's never tired of explaining. He's never stopping to tell that, listen to us, these dogs and pigs, you think we feed them for free? They do a lot of work. Okay. They do a lot of work in their own fashion, in their own way. They do a lot of work. Okay. So what's the work? They say, well, it's the work you're too ignorant to understand. It's the kind of work that you animals, you little stupid, dumb animals cannot understand. Okay, if you really want to ask what it is that they do, that, we feed them, well, you see, they have to supervise, and by supervise, I'm sure they mean like terrorize and make sure that they're under their control, like police them, right? But anyway, supervise the entire farm. And when they do that, they make these long notes on files, reports, minutes, and memoranda. So they jot down the minutes, they make the memoranda, they arrange that, they put the files, they do the reports, they do all of that. Now, again, like Hubeb was saying in the beginning, Hubeb was saying that the animals are not that educated, right? And that seems to be just the case here, that they're not educated. And what does Squealer do, or what do the pigs do? Throw like fancy names at them to confuse them into getting tricked, into just getting subdued, tricked into getting subdued, into like not questioning and not like thinking anymore because they're so confused and bamboozled. So okay, now in
one very ironic thing is that no one in the animal farm has any wisdom at all. The animals, they were dumb and they can't think. The pigs, they were all cunning, not wise.
Exactly. And one other thing here, in a sense, like I think it makes sense, okay, that some person has to do the books, right? You know how they say you need an accountant, you need to get your what is it called? Take stock of your items in the warehouse, or like what's going in, what's going out. You need to do those calculations, and you need to do all of that, right? And you need to make those records in maybe these files, in maybe these reports, as a part of the meetings of minutes of the meeting, and in memos. But look at the hypocrisy. If really they were actually making real reports and actually making real files and actually putting 2 and 2 together, then tell me this, why were they burning them immediately after? Do you ever burn them? No, you keep them in store. You keep those report cards, those notes that you've made of your business and how it's growing and how you're managing it. You keep it in like your file cabinet or whatever. See, so this was of the highest importance for the welfare of the farm. In fact, not just will we do this, but they're not like saying, oh yeah, we're just throwing them into the fire, all these records, so-called records, because clearly they're not actually writing anything. Okay, but anyway, these records, let's say that they are being thrown. Okay, so Squealer can say, what's it to you? What's it to you what we're doing with these records? Like, don't ask us what we're doing with these records, and tries to hide that they're throwing it in the fire. Like, he could do that. But look at just how dumb they think the animals are. And in fact, in a way, how dumb truly the animals are, because they're saying that by throwing those records into the fire, they're so like, boldly saying it out and blatantly saying it that, oh, we have to throw it into the fire, because if we don't, then our farm will be ruined, and it's for the welfare of our farm. Okay, and at the end of the day, nonetheless, the rest of the animals can clearly see that despite, this so-called work that the pigs and the dogs are doing, despite the so-called work, they are not actually making food. They don't make food. They aren't like tilling the soil or plowing or harvesting or like weeding or fertilizing or planting or watering or anything like that. No, they're not doing any of that. They are just getting food from somewhere, and they eat a lot because their appetites are very good, and there's so many. So they are always well fed, but we aren't, because they kind of tell us that we have to be frugal, and they kind of tell us that, you know, there isn't that much for us few people who are actually doing all the hard work. Okay, anyway, as for the others, their life, so far as they knew, was as it had always been. So now see, now these are our people, okay, the rest of these animals. This was a paragraph on the dogs and the pigs. This is for the others. Their life was exactly as it had always been. They were hungry generally. They slept on the straw. They drank from the pool. They labored like laborers in the fields. In winters, they were troubled by the cold, meaning they're not even getting like hay for their things, you know, for their warmth or whatever, you know, cotton or something for their, to keep themselves warm, no covering. In summers, they were bothered by the flies. Sometimes the older ones of them would rack their dim memories and try to determine whether in the early days of the rebellion, when Jones's expulsion was still recent, things had been better or worse than now. And we had discussed this, that sometimes we forget the past. In fact, mostly we forget what good or bad things happened in the past. So in this case, they have forgotten, like, and the old ones like Clover and all, they like are thinking, wait, is our life better than before, or is it not better than before? And they're thinking, but they could not remember. There was nothing with which they could compare their present lives to the old life. They couldn't, they had no statistic, they had no proof, they had no evidence, they had no memory also, except that every single day, Squealer would squeal out lists and lists and lists of figures and facts, and, you know, figures and facts which clearly are, you know, made up, right? They're fabricated, they're altered, they are concocted figures, they're not real figures. And every single time, invariably, meaning every single time, these figures told and showed that they are doing such great job. The farm is amazing. It's getting better and better. The animals therefore found this problem insoluble. They couldn't solve it. Like, we can't understand. Why is it that if things are so much better, our life is the same, and we are like poor, and we are feeling cold, and we're still sleeping on straw? Why is it? They're trying to understand why. In any case, they had little time for speculating on things. Now, this is a very, very important rule of propaganda. You know what you do? You like make an animal, you make the person so busy that they can't remember to think, or they don't get the time to think or to remember like what are the problems. So now they can't even like think so much about this issue that, hey, wait, is our life truly better? Like, is there something wrong? Should we like talk about it, debate about it in secret, and maybe do something to help our situation? They don't have time. They don't have the time. Because why? Because they're having to work day and night. Only the Benjamin, who is our who's a donkey, only he professed to remember every detail of his long life, and to know that things never had been nor could be much better or much worse. Hunger, hardship, and disappointment being, so he said, the unalterable law of life. Okay, now Benjamin's character is the stoic sort of character. He's like a stoic. Stoic means like he doesn't really, like he's very, not emotional. So in a sense, he says, I remember every single detail.
He doesn't care.
No, maybe he does care, but he's taken his life to be a life of hardship. And he's like saying that no, life needs to be hard. And in this sense, like even Boxer was very much like that. Like till the last breath, he said, I want to make the windmill, I want to work hard. But Boxer did have some good hopes for after his retirement. Like he saw some positive light and he wanted to enjoy his life. But with Benjamin, and maybe if Boxer had been around, Benjamin right now would have been more, you know, positive and friendly. But he's like, you know what, things cannot be better or worse, because life is always going to be hungry. We are always going to have hardships. We're always going to be disappointed. Now, in a sense, he's stoic, but in a sense, he's also so like programmed. He's so properly like influenced by these animals, by these pigs and the dogs, you know, the big animals, that he and also by Jones, like initially in Jones. And I think this has a bearing also on the fact that donkeys usually are known to be the most giveaway animals. Like they are the most debased animals or the third class animals of the animals. Like to be a donkey is an insult, right? And the way they bray, they're the worst and most unwanted, unloved creatures. So in a sense,
Most disgraced animals.
most disgraced animals, most humiliated animals. And so in a sense, it is like he knows that it is his lot in life, it is his destiny, that there will always be this for him, and he's like okay with it. So that's a sad impression to have. Yet the animals never gave up hope. More, they never lost, even for an instant, their sense of honor and privilege in being members of Animal Farm. So these animals are still so idealistic. They believe that they're doing the right thing. They believe they're lucky. They believe that, oh, we're so privileged and so great. We're so grateful for having this opportunity to be the only farm in the whole country, in all of England, to be owned and operated by animals. Not one of them, not even the youngest, not even the newcomers who had been brought from farms 10 or 20 miles away, ever ceased to marvel at that. Okay, so clearly being part of Animal Farm, clearly having, yeah, exactly, Vanya, you're very right about that. Clearly the animals who are coming outside of Animal Farm, not from Animal Farm, but from outside, they say, oh, you guys are so cool. You guys are so cool. We want to work in your farm because you're the only farm which is run by animals. And yet we know that this farm is nothing but a sham farm. It's a sham. It's actually run by animals, but in a very similar way to how humans were running it, that there's a clear distinction, that there's a ruler, the ruler is controlling, the ruler is belying and deceiving the people under him on the totem pole, in this hierarchy. He's like putting pressure on their gullets, making sure that they cannot speak, terrorizing them, victimizing them, confusing them, and doing all sorts of other propaganda to keep them under check and not step a toe out of line. So when they heard the gun booming, when they would see the green flag fluttering at the masthead, their hearts would swell with imperishable pride, meaning it could not perish. This pride could never finish. And the talk turned always towards the old heroic days when they expelled Jones, the writing of the 7 commandments, the battles in which the human invaders had been defeated. None of the old dreams had been abandoned. The republic of the animals, which Major had foretold when the green fields of England should be untrodden by human feet, was still believed in. Meaning the animals, despite the fact that they have gone through a really bad regime of animal rule. Okay, so they've gotten rid of the humans, but they have a really bad regime of animal rule. These animals are still so idealistic and so like preserved on their initial ideas and thoughts and goals and notions, that no, we want to be the animal. We want that the entire world becomes the animal farm. Like we animals should always be independent and be our own people. So okay, someday they knew that it was coming. Someday they knew that all the fields of England will be untrodden, meaning not stepped on by human feet. It might not be soon, it might not be within the lifetime of any animal now living, but it was still coming. Even the tune of Beasts of England was perhaps hummed secretly here and there. Okay, because of course you cannot hum Beasts of England in front of Napoleon and all. You just can't. And at any rate, it was a fact that every animal on the farm knew it, though no one would have dared to sing it aloud. Okay, so they can't sing it aloud. It might be that their lives were hard and that not all of their hopes had been fulfilled, but they were conscious that they were not as other animals. If they went hungry, it was not from feeding tyrannical human beings. If they worked hard, at least they worked for themselves. No creature among them went upon two legs. No creature called any other creature master. All animals were equal. So these are their beliefs.
Miss, and what is more ironic is that they have two personalities. One is that they're as inspired as the Muslims were from Qaidism, and they're treated the same way the Muslims were treated from the British.
Exactly. So you see, we can find parallels of this story in our own personal identity as Pakistanis, right? And then, of course, I already told you this is an allegory of the Russian Revolution. And, you know, like if we had more time, we would have like looked at it in greater detail. But it's not that important to look at it in greater detail. What's really important is to just being able to recognize these ideas that, oh my God, they still think that, okay, if not all their dreams are fulfilled, if even now their life is hard, at least it's because it is because of their own luck and their own selves. It's not because of a human overpowering them and them having to call a human their master. And all animals were equal. And like Hubeb said, there's irony in these lines that it's not true, right? It's not true that the animals are equal. Anyway, one day in early summer, Squealer ordered the sheep to follow him and led them out to a piece of waste ground at the other end of the farm, which had become overgrown with birch saplings. Okay, let's just see what are these birch saplings. The saplings are the small.
Birch is a kind of tree.
Yeah, birch is a tree. Saplings are their babies, but I want to just see the type of birch. Like, okay, so a picture like this of the birch saplings or whatever. Okay, so he took them there, and the sheep spent the whole day there browsing the leaves under Squealer's supervision. In the evening, he returned to the farmhouse himself, but as it was warm weather, told the sheep to stay where they were. It ended by their remaining there for a whole week, during which time the other animals saw nothing of them. Now, you remember the sheep? They're like the most brainless of the creatures. Okay.
And the most obedient.
Not really necessarily. Yeah, they're like mischief mongers.
Do what they're told. No arguments.
Okay, I don't know, but I just get more of an impression from them that they are the mischief mongers. They are very like opportunist. If they see that, you know, Napoleon can give them some extra food, and for that they just need to say all what is that? All four legs good, two leg bad. And they keep doing that at every single moment when there's any like actual need to think, and they distract everyone, and they aren't being true to the real animal cause. Then I feel like they're just bad characters. Like they have that little, they're not brainless per se, but they act a little brainless sometimes. And mostly if they have a brain, then it's more like on the negative side, because they are not being too sincere with anyone except their own selves. So Squealer then every day takes them there, and for a whole week, nobody sees them. And Squealer was with them for the greater part of every day. He said, teaching them to sing a new song. So if they're going to sing a new song, privacy is needed. It was just after the sheep had returned on a pleasant evening when the animals had finished work and was making their way back to the farm buildings that the terrified neighing of a horse sounded from the yard. Startled, the animals stopped in their tracks. It was Clover's voice. She neighed again, and all the animals broke into a gallop and rushed into the yard. Then they saw what Clover had seen. So something really weird happened that Clover had seen, and she got startled, and she's making a noise. She's making a ruckus. It was a pig walking on his hind legs, meaning on two legs. His back legs, he is walking. Yes, it was Squealer. A little awkwardly walking, as though he was not quite used to supporting his big bulk in that position of like on his two legs. But with perfect balance, he was strolling across the yard. And a moment later, out from the door of the farmhouse came a long file of pigs, all walking on their hind legs. Some did better than others. One or two were a trifle, a little unsteady, and looked as though they would have liked the support of a stick. But every one of them made his way right round the yard successfully. And finally, there was a tremendous baying of dogs and a shrill crowing from the black cockerel, and out came Napoleon himself, majestically upright, casting haughty, very proud glances from side to side, with the dogs gamboling around him, like enjoying themselves around him. He carried a whip in his trotter. Okay, in his this thing, he has whip. Now, this was the ultimate thing that I think every single time, every single time that, like, we talk about the animal farm and the animal revolution and everything could have been condoned, everything could have been accepted. But one thing that the sheep also, without thinking or with thinking or whatever it was, were taught, and which they used to say, and which has been a consistent theme, and which has been the major distinction or divide between human and animal, was that animals walk on 4 legs and the humans walk on 2. And yet, here comes not just 1, not just 2, not just 3, but every single pig walking on 2 legs. Now, you want to think, then why did the pigs why did Squealer take away the sheep for a long time away? But then when they come back, then they're all walking, the pigs are walking on 2 legs. Like, you want to think about that? Maybe they've given an answer. Let's just see. There was a deadly silence, amazed, terrified, huddling together. The animals watch. Okay, so they're amazed also, but they're terrified also, and they're huddled together. The animals watch this long line of pigs march slowly round the yard, like a march past. It was as though the world had turned upside down. Then there came a moment when the first shock had worn off, and when, in spite of everything, in spite of their terror of the dogs and of the habit developed through long years of never complaining, never criticizing, no matter what happened, they might have uttered some word of protest, but just at that moment, as though at a signal, all the sheep burst out into a tremendous bleating of 4 legs good, 2 legs better. 4 legs good, 2 legs better. 4 legs good, 2 legs better. What that means is that, okay, you can convince the animals 1,000 things. Okay, you can trick them and put, pixie dust in their eyes, blind them from the truth, and cast spells on them, and yet they were ready to protest and say something about, and they were ready to shed their terror of the dogs, and they had developed, by the way, a habit of always remaining quiet, never saying what was on their mind, always just like second guessing themselves, always being in doubt and saying, no, we are wrong, Napoleon's right, it's all good. Despite that, at this point, they were going to speak, because this was their world turned upside down. Remember, there was hope. Remember, despite all the rubbish that was going on, there was hope right here. And so they remained quiet. Just when they talk about it, like, what is, there goes the bleating of the 4 legs good, 2 legs better. So the 7 days that these sheep were there, they were actually being reprogrammed to come up with and distract and do their usual mischief and say these words. It went on for 5 minutes without stopping. So just imagine, how can anyone say anything? And just listening to the pigs saying this, who have their whole lives always interrupted any positive, constructive, sensible train of thought with 4 legs good, 2 legs bad statement, for them to say, like, all the animals are more shocked. They're shell-shocked. And by the time the sheep had quieted down, the chance to utter any protest had passed, because the animals had gone. The pigs had gone back. Benjamin felt a nose nuzzling on his shoulder. He looked around. It was Clover. Her old eyes looked dimmer than ever. So she's kind of losing any spark in her eyes. Without saying anything, she tugged gently at his mane and led him round to the end of the big barn where the 7 commandments were written. For a minute or two now, they stood there gazing at the tattered wall with its white lettering. My sight is failing, she said finally. Even when I was young, I could not have read what was written there, but it appears to me that the wall looks different. Are the 7 commandments the same as they used to be, Benjamin? For once, Benjamin consented to break his rule, and he read out to her what was written on the wall. There was nothing there now except one single commandment, and it ran: all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. After that, it did not seem strange when next day the pigs who were supervising the work of the farm all carried whips in their trotters. It did not even seem strange to learn that the pigs had bought themselves a wireless set. They were arranging to install a telephone. They had taken out subscriptions to John Bull, Titbits, and the Daily Mirror. It did not seem strange when Napoleon was seen strolling in the farmhouse garden with a pipe in his mouth. No, not even when the pigs took Mr. Jones's clothes out of the wardrobes, put them on, Napoleon himself appearing in a black coat, rat catcher breeches, and leather leggings, while his favorite sew appeared in a watered silk dress which Mrs. Jones had been used to wear on Sundays. Okay, so Benjamin is the one who can read. Benjamin never read. Never. He just didn't want to read because it partly comes from his donkey stubbornness also. Like, donkeys are known to be very stubborn also. And you can't make a donkey budge no matter what. And that's why, like, there's this whole whipping trend that is going on with donkeys. They're so stupid and they're so obstinate. You have to whip them into compliance, and even then they would hardly take a step, right? Forget whether it's a good thing to whip or not. But he breaks his rule. He's broken his rule twice, by the way. He's broken it once when that big van with Boxer was inside, and they're saying, Napoleon and the gang is saying that, oh, we're taking him to the hospital. And he says, are you guys mad? Can you not read? So that was the first time he broke it. And then he broke it here. And he said to her that this is the rule. And if you see, the rule is also very vague and craftily written. It's a tricky slope. It's a slippery slope of words. It's like wordplay and word magic. It's like you can catch it, but you can't catch it. Like, it doesn't say all animals are not equal and just end it at that. It's not that. It's not that, because that's too clear. And they're too wily, they're too crafty, they're too sly to play that game. Okay, so what are they doing? They're saying all animals are equal, but some animals are equal, but more. But equal, by using the word equal in this word statement also, in a sense, they are still keeping an equality between them, and yet they are not equal, because there's but, and then there's some, and then the others. There's them, you and us divide, like them and us on the other side. Okay, so we have all of that. Anyway, let's just finish it, because I think we are about to finish. So after this, after knowing that all animals are not equal, nothing.
It's so ironic that they use equal in such a sentence.
Yeah. Dana, can you give it? A week later in the afternoon, a number of dogs.
Ironic that they use equal in such a sentence.
Exactly. Now that's the thing. Okay, a week later in the afternoon, a number of dog carts drove up to the farm. A deputation of neighboring farmers had been invited to make a tour of inspection. They were shown all over the farm and expressed great admiration for everything they saw, especially the windmill. The animals were weeding the turnip field. They worked diligently, hardly raising their faces from the ground, and not knowing whether to be more frightened of the pigs or of the human visitors. Now, yeah. So the point here is that the humans have always been like known as the enemies, and we don't like them and we don't trust them. And the humans, to be honest, have given them no reason to trust them. Okay, in the past, the humans have not given them any reason to trust them. But now, like, first, what was happening? First, the initial rule was, we hate the humans, they're bad, they're not good. We shouldn't discuss with them or talk with them. But then Napoleon introduced Whimper, like that middleman, and Napoleon used to in secret talk to Whimper, and in secret talk to him about all the things that were wrong, like do those business transactions with Whimper. But now they are all there. All these humans are there to like see the exhibit of how the animal farm is being run. And the animals are so scared, and not just of the human visitors, which is understandable, by the way, but even of the pigs, because they're like, what are the pigs up to? That evening, loud laughter and bursts of singing came from the farmhouse, and suddenly, at the sound of the mingled voices, the animals were stricken with curiosity. What could be happening in there now that, for the first time, animals and human beings were meeting on terms of equality? With one accord, they began to creep as quietly as possible into the farmhouse garden. So that evening, there was a sound of mingled voices, like mingle meaning that the voices are all mixed up, and they're just like, you know what, we need to know what's going on. Why is there so much of singing and laughing? So with one accord, like they became one, they mustered their courage and they went. At the gate they paused, half frightened, but Clover did lead the way. They tiptoed to the house, and some animals were tall enough so they looked over the dining room window. There, round the long table, sat half a dozen farmers, half a dozen of the more eminent, more famous and important pigs, like Napoleon. And Napoleon himself was occupying the seat of honor at the head of the table. The pigs appeared completely at ease. They weren't like, oh my God, we're sitting with humans. Oh my God. No, they're sitting like... The company had been enjoying a game of cards. They're playing cards. But they had broken off for a moment. So they're taking a break, evidently, in order to drink a toast, okay? Drink alcohol. A large drug was circulating around. The mugs were being refilled with beer. No one even noticed these wondering faces who were looking at them. These animals were peering in, peeping in, and looking that what on earth is happening. Mr. Pillington of Foxwood stood up, his mug in his hand. In a moment, he said he would ask the present company, like people, the pigs there, to drink. But before doing so, he had to say a few words, okay? There were a few words that he felt it incumbent upon him to say. It was a source of great satisfaction to him, he said, and he was sure to all others present to feel that a long period of mistrust and misunderstanding had now come to an end. So he's saying, oh, thank you, Lord, thank you, everyone. There was a lot of hate between us, but now we know it was a misunderstanding and we actually really like you. There had been a time, not that he or any of these people, like not him, there was a time, but not when he was there or when these animals were there, although it was him and it was these animals, when there was a type of hostility, there was no friendship, there was some misgiving, there was doubt. Unfortunate incidents occurred, mistaken ideas had been current. It had been felt that the existence of a farm owned and operated by pigs was abnormal and unsettling. Too many farmers had assumed without due inquiry that on such a farm, a spirit of license and indiscipline would prevail. So they're saying that he thought that a lot of the farmers were saying that, oh, if pigs are going to rule, they're going to destroy the world or destroy the farm or they destroy like the neighboring farms. They had been nervous. But all such doubts were now dispelled, finished. Today, he and his friends had visited Animal Farm, inspected every inch of it with their own eyes. And what did they find? That it was not only up to date, but there was discipline, there was orderliness, which should be an example to all farmers everywhere. And no doubt, because pigs are so controlling. Yeah, so there is going to be order. He believed that he was right in saying that the lower animals on Animal Farm did more work and received less food than any animals in the county. Indeed, he and his fellow visitors today had observed many features which they intended to introduce on their own farms immediately. And he's saying that, you know what was so great about the way you guys are running Animal Farm is that the lower creatures are getting less food and doing more work. And we're going to learn that and we're going to implement it. Which kind of makes you think that, look, when Jones was around, at least he wasn't saying, okay, these animals are lower. He was treating animals equally. Okay, the pigs are also going to work. The horse is also going to work. The cow is also going to work. The dog is also going to work. Like he was being more equal with them. He would end his remarks, he said, by emphasizing once again the friendly feelings that subsisted and ought to subsist between Animal Farm and its neighbors. Between pigs and humans, there was not any clash of interest. Pigs and humans are one. There's struggles, difficulties, they're one. You know, isn't there a labor problem everywhere? And look at them. They're calling these other animals, the ones who are actually the laborers, a labor problem. Like they're the ones who give them problems of labor. Here it became apparent that Mr. Pillington was about to spring some carefully prepared witticism on the company, but for a moment he was too overcome by amusement to be able to utter it. After much choking, during which various chins turned purple, he managed to get it out. If you have your lower animals to contend it, we have our lower classes. This bon mot set the table in a roar, and Mr. Pillington once again congratulated the pigs on the low rations, the long working hours, and the general absence of pampering which he had observed on Animal Farm. Oh, okay. So you know what? We are going to just, because we just have a little bit, we'll, I guess, finish it next class, meaning tomorrow, because we're just going to do it. And tomorrow, I guess, we're going to also...
The animals have found out the actual truth now.
The animals have found out the actual truth that these are the lower class. They are the ones who are getting more work and less pay, no food. Yes, Nail? Yes, Nail.
But I'm not going to be here tomorrow.
Nail, we'll try and do it with you on another time, but let's just finish it now. Like, we have to finish it tomorrow. Okay? So anyway, take care. Bye-bye.